One and go. Hey, what's up, everybody? It's Wellness Week Live. I am DJ Anthony here in Jersey. There's Rico Graziano in California. We got the coast coming together. So we got an interesting show. That's it, baby. We got an interesting show today. We're going to talk about sobriety and addiction to drugs. And alcohol is a drug. So alcohol, drugs, same thing. So, and Rico and I both have intimate knowledge of sobriety and addiction. However, for you, the viewers, you'll be interested because Rico's experience with sobriety and addiction and my experience with sobriety and addiction, although they parallel and intersect in many ways, it's different because my experience with drugs, alcohol, sobriety, and addiction and death has been through the loss of my son, who was addicted to drugs and took his own life a few years back. Rico's experience with addiction and sobriety, which you'll hear from him, is about his direct experience, So I think it's interesting to hear these two kind of almost bookends in a way. And also the fact that I've never done drugs. I've never been drunk. I've never been buzzed. So I think it's important to know that. And I think it creates an interesting mix between Rico's experience, my family's experience, and how we see things, which more or less we're going to probably agree with a lot of stuff. And Rico, I just want to say thanks for talking about this because I feel like when people shut up about this, and everyone has a right to shut up, no one has to talk about it. But I really thank you for stepping up and wanting to speak about it, because the more we speak about it, the more we can help people out. It's not the most comfortable thing to talk about, but it's necessary, and it will save lives. You and I speaking about this, so I thank you for having a level of bravery to speak about it and tell us about your journey and your success. So thank you very much, dude. I appreciate that.
No problem. I mean, whenever I don't talk about it a lot, but whenever I'm asked, I'm an open book.
Yeah, man. Thank you, bro. And same here. I don't feel that comfortable talking about it, but it's necessary to talk about it. We have to speak about it, and that it helps people out, it helps families out, it helps addicts out. And I also want to just say real quick. So I set the table in the background, and by the way, folks, Rico and I grew up together. So if you haven't known that from other shows, just to kind of give you the context and setting the table for all y'all out there. All right. I also want to say this too before we get into it, and you tell me what you think, Rico. So, you have people out there who are ignorant, and I don't mean that they're bad people, but they're ignorant, and they'll say shit like this. Addiction, it's not a disease, it's a choice. I fucking hate when people say that, but it's like, bro, shut the fuck up. It's like, you don't even know. So I would say this. Addiction is a type of disease, and I would say addiction is a choice in the sense of, before the person picks up the first glass of beer, before they pick up the first joint, before they do anything, they haven't touched anything ever. Yes, it's a choice then. But once they cross that line and they pick up the first beer, they pick up the first joint, they snort the first line, then you're in the devil's hands. You may or may not get addicted. You may or may not. But now you're playing in the devil's backyard. And now it is a disease because you just bought the farm. And you may win, you may not. My son didn't win. He passed away. So it's a disease once you cross that threshold and make that first choice, that first hit, that first drink. Would you agree, Rico, or not with that definition, my definition of addiction?
It's kind of like they talk about breaking the chains of addiction. And I personally think that it's like already in the DNA, like in the sense of, like addiction, some families just have more, more prone to it. Like, bad example, but an example like American Indians, they say are higher prone to alcoholism and whatnot. And but I think I'm just using them because that's the first off the top of my head. But I'm sure every, ethnic background has, every human's DNA can, like diabetes or something. Like it's in the DNA. Like, so I kind of think that like that's the way. You're more prone, you're higher odds than a regular person to, like, some people will eat ice cream growing up and come from a normal family and be like, oh, where I eat ice cream. And I'm like, oh, that wasn't, ice cream was, what I'm saying? Like,
yeah, fair enough.
The brain is just wired differently, So, I mean, again, everybody's got a different opinion, but it is classified as a disease. And again, I always say, people, if you're not sure if your insurance company covers it, it's 100%.
Right. And to your point, and I would say this: let's forget about addiction being a disease or not. It's a moot point. It's almost a red herring. It's irrelevant because someone you love is suffering. I don't care if it's a disease or not. they are hurting. They're dying. They're suffering. I don't want to. Who cares about the debating of the Webster dictionary term? We have to help this person. This person is not an evil person. My son was not an evil person.
No,
he had an addiction. You had an addiction. You and I both know people who have addictions. Hey, I'm there to help best I can. I'm not going to judge because you know what? I'm not God. I'm not perfect. People can throw shit and shade at me too for whatever issues I got. We all got issues. So let's not even play that game to the people watching, and I hate, so right. Okay. Very good. All right. So let me ask you, cause I'm always curious too. And I have like I said, I have experience via my son and via some friends, as I'm sure you do too, with other friends that you may have, but yours is again, frontline yourself. So for viewers out there, like, when did you, well, let me ask you this. Okay. Yeah. So when did you start to use drugs, alcohol, drug? When were you 11, 12, 13? For like, when was that?
It was like a high school thing, like 9th, 10th grade. I remember experimenting, like it started like cigarettes and then, weed. And I went up the totem pole, and it was, and I can't say there was any particular reason. When I think back a lot, it was like, it wasn't, people have all these things that they like, we break down after the fact, but I tell you, a lot of it was just like, it made me feel good. I'm a person that likes, the little escape and make me feel good. You know what I'm saying? So that was like what propelled it forward. And then the addiction kicked in and,
So that was my next question. What did you start with? So you're saying you started with like alcohol and pot?
Well, actually, yeah, pretty much. I like right from the start, from like cigarettes to like like alcohol to pot to cocaine to opiates. Like I went right up the list. Like like the whole, because sooner or later you're like, that's not doing it, and then you go to try. Oh, well, what about that? And then you try something else, and then you're like, oh, I like it. Then you start mixing them, and
right.
Like it's the progression. Just it's a progressive disease.
So this is interesting. So, because a lot of people think like, oh, drug addict, the big ones, heroin, meth. Okay, those are bad. Those are big. What do you call it? The new one out now, what's been around for a while, but it's it's opioid. What do they call that?
Fentanyl.
Fentanyl, right. Mm-hmm. Okay, but I'd make the argument, and if you look on the CDC's website, beer, wine, and sangria kill far more than cocaine, heroin, fentanyl, meth combined. Every 11 months, more people die of alcohol, just beer. And hello, but you know what? That because it's legal, because those deaths don't matter because it's legal and it's cool. Yay, celebrate. I would make the argument like parents and schools, they got to really make, and you just kind of said it. How did you start? You started with cigarettes and alcohol. So that's the gateway drug. Alcohol is the gateway drug. Beer, wine. So, and it kills far more than, we're not even talking about the gateway effect, which you just alluded to. Okay, so why? So you just mentioned it, but why do you think you started? And you said that because you wanted to just feel good and get away.
It was feeling, when I look back, it was feeling good. Maybe like, you can go into like, again, like you start breaking it down, and I'm not like a big fan, because when I do clearly remember, like maybe I felt separated, maybe I wasn't the best athlete, maybe you know what I'm saying, but like I don't really remember like saying, oh, because I had friends, right? I always had friends, so it was like I played in sports. I wasn't great at it, but it wasn't something that was like hindering me. Like, oh, I suck at sports, I was like, whatever. I kind of always knew that. I mean, but people have that in childhood traumas and whatnot. I get it. You know what I'm saying? Like, again, I'm like those people who don't know about addiction, like they don't realize how lucky they are to not know about it. You know what I'm saying? It's like, so, it was one of those, the one thing that it stands out the most is probably like the escape, the being able to escape of like, they're like, what are you escaping? And I'm like, I don't know, every day, I guess. Like,
that was my son too. My son was escaping the everyday, stress from school or friends or home or this or that. It doesn't have to be you're escaping from World War II.
Yeah, self-medicating of like, what I'm saying, like not knowing you had anxiety, you know what I'm saying, or something like that. They talk about a lot of self-medicating to, well, it took me years of sobriety to figure it like that out. Like, oh, I suffer from a little anxiety. Like, oh, what's that? Like,
Yeah, because I think, even when I was younger, and I'm talking not kid, I'm talking in my 20s, I thought like, oh, people do drugs. That's because they're evil. Now I understand it's not because they're evil. It's because, like you said, they're looking to just have some relief of daily stress or whatever, and it creeps up on you,
Yeah. Before you know
alcohol,
it.
maybe a little pot, and so right, it's not that the person's evil. It's just that they don't know they have an addictive personality yet, and then oh, now like you said, you're in the hole, and but
again, it's like swimming out in the ocean. You keep swimming, you're just partying, going along, and then you turn around, you're like, oh shit, I'm like, where's land? Like, you don't, but then you don't think that, but that's where you're at. And
yeah. So what was ultimately looking back, and let me ask you this before I forget. So how long have you been sober now for?
April 29th will be 16 years.
Oh, congratulations, man. Wow. That's wow. Okay. So you're stacking it up. That's awesome. And that's congratulations. And I hear, and I hope that people hear this can see like Rico can do it,
Oh yeah. I did drugs for a long time. You got to remember, I'm 50. So I, was well into my 30s and started in freshman year. So I clocked years.
Yeah.
It's not impossible.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Now I'm going to get to the sobriety in a bit, but so what ultimately, like looking back at your dark days, what was your substance of choice? Like, what did you usually gravitate to? Like, what was your thing?
Probably like cocaine and like opiates, like the heroin. See, I used to think I wasn't bad because I snorted it, so it was like white.
Right.
Like, I was like, oh, well, I'm doing coke, so like, like what's the you know what I'm saying? So what was like, snorting heroin or like, maybe an oxy, but more like pretty much heroin and cocaine were my final. And alcohol was always lingering there. Like alcohol by that point, alcohol was just, it was there. Like it wasn't something that it was just, you drink beers when you're doing this or whatever, or the bar, like it just became background noise.
Right. Okay. And then so what finally made you stop? I'm assuming you had to stop a few times before you officially stopped. But what was the breaking point where like that you didn't turn back at 16 plus years? Like when did you stop?
So there was a point where, like you got arrested with drugs. Like back in the day, it's not like now. You get caught with marijuana, you got in trouble, you went to jail. Like, what I'm saying? You did like, they processed you, you go to court. It was like, so I remember there was this one time when I was sitting in there and I was there and they had like, whatever it was, I had to stay a few more days than the 3 or 4 usually that you're in and out. And I remember looking around and I was like, man, look at these pieces of crap. Like, just like staring at everybody, like judging really, really hard.
Yeah.
And then I realized we were all in the same orange jumpsuits. And I was like, oh shit. And then like something happened like on the 4th or 5th day that I kind of felt like I got away a little bit with. So in Bergen County, they did a little, I don't know if they still do it, I'm not sure, but they did a Suboxone detox there. Like Suboxone is a good drug, but you have to do it right. Like you have to do the detox of it, like, a 5-day. So they were kind of experimenting with it. It was kind of new. Now you got to remember, this was 16 years ago. Yeah. And it like worked. So like after the 4th, 5th day, I wasn't like detox, like dope sick, they call it. Like, I'm saying? Like when you almost feel like it's like the worst flu you ever had, knowing that you can get rid of it in a second. Like, you know what I'm saying? It's like if you have the worst toothache, knowing that all you got to do is one thing and it's gone. And you're the opposite. You're feeling better. And I kind of felt like I was like, did I get away with something? Like, I feel like, because it was never like that. Like, I was like, oh, like maybe this is like my shot, like in the sense of, but that still didn't like really do it. I went to rehab after that.
Right.
And, luckily I was locked in a safe place to where when those cravings came up, I couldn't act on them like right away. Because, I'm sure if I was just straight out let into the real world and whatnot, and it could have gone a million different ways, but it didn't. It went the way it went, and that's the way, God or whatever,
Yeah. Okay, so that's when you broke the chain.
That was when that's when that particular one that ended it all happened. But so that was the one. I don't know why it was that one. I don't know. Right. They talk about the bottom. Like I've had worse situations than that. Yeah. Like you don't need to be at your worst point in life to get sober. Like you don't need to wait to be homeless.
Right.
Like I've known people who've been homeless, got apartments, this, that, the other thing, and then got sober. You know what I'm saying? Like it's not,
Yeah, and so you didn't. So right. So I mean, so you did not get clean on your first try. You had to try many times before you actually got clean?
Well, I tried, but it was always like half measures. Like I was like, I don't want to do this, but then it'll be like 2 days later, and I'm like, oh, why am I doing it? Like, what's the reason? Like, who cares? Like, like I always say, like, the worst word you want to hear is, I don't want to curse, but I'll just sue for this moment. Like, fuck it. Once you say that word, like, that's the start of the slide, and you don't realize if you're like, oh, fuck it, and then all of a sudden, I'll just have a beer. Oh, boom, back to square one.
Yeah, the reason why I asked is because I think maybe somebody hearing this now who's struggling with addiction and is trying to get clean, maybe they feel like it's impossible because like, oh, I've tried so many times and I keep on failing. It's not worth it. But you just shed light on that. You tried, but you went back for whatever reasons. So, anyone struggling hearing this, it's okay if you fail, get back up and try again. You might not get clean on your 17th try. It might have to be your 23rd try.
Oh yeah, I know people who've done it 100 times, even going to meetings and everything. Like, I mean, at the end of the day, one of the things is that they were like, hey, if you do this, like, if you go to meetings, you get a sponsor and, get involved in the program, make friends, like, they're like, you'll stop. And I'm like, whatever. Like, like I kind of almost went into it with like, I'll prove you wrong. Like, this is stupid. Like, like the worst, I always say it was like the worst, like selling, like, oh, just don't do it and come sit in a room for an hour and make friends and, talk about your feelings will stop you from a terrible life-threatening addiction. And I was like, no, like that is, it's bullshit. And I want to teach you that it's bullshit. And you know what? My
son felt like that.
Where I am.
Yeah, my son felt like that too. He always looked kind of like, why am I in this room with these people? Like he kind of he's like, what is this bullshit?
Well, of course, that's what you want your addiction to say. Like, why am I when I go to a gym? I'm like, oh, I'm never gonna have muscles like that. Why am I coming here?
Right.
And you realize that guy's been going to the gym for years and days, and
Yeah. Okay. So, how did now kind of because drugs not only affect you or the person doing drugs, but it has collateral damage. So how did it affect your friendships? Now I'm not talking about, I guess, any friends, but how did your drug addiction affect your friendships?
Oh, well, you know what? Like there's a point where it comes where you just start cutting people out who get in the way of it.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like I remember I was dating a girl and she's like, oh, I want you to stop. Beautiful girl, stunning. And I was just like, she's got to go. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, like it was like one of those things, like subconsciously it happened. But when I look back, I'm like, oh yeah. Like she was getting in the way. And you know what? And then, you just find lower companions. You find the guys who are wrong the same way you are. And
birds of a feather flock together.
Yeah, exactly. You flock together and you kind of just slowly cut people out because then you get mad at them.
Right.
They're getting in the way of what you want to do, which makes you at the time, happy. And and that's it. Like, like luckily enough, I got a lot of them back and I didn't really burn bridges like robbing or anything like that. Right. So I kind of got, I was a little fortunate in that sense.
Well, now you talk about friendships. Now you can get rid of friends and all that stuff. But how did it affect your family? Because we can't write off the immediate family.
Yeah.
You can't. So how did it affect your family life with your parents? And
well, the one thing that was different about my parents too, I see with a lot of people is that my parents, they came off the boat, literally off the boat from Italy. So I don't think they fully understood addiction the way we do.
Right.
Like, like I don't think they were like, oh, he's doing it every day, all day. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, who does that? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, kind of like they were a little naive to that because both of their sides don't really have like, like maybe one uncle drinks a lot, but like, you know what I'm saying? Like both sides, big families don't really have that.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Just like with your son, like it wasn't in the, the surface DNA supposedly of anybody in the family. So it was hard for them to grasp the concept. And when people tried to explain to them that it was a disease, they were kind of like, what do you mean? Like, they know diseases like, oh, you got cancer, or you got this, or you got that. Like, like, like they didn't get the mental disease aspect of it. But, it was tough for my brother and sister. They knew about it and whatnot. And it was like, like what you was like, there's only so much you can do when somebody's an adult. And
I mean, I myself and my son's mother, we were, two people that we didn't, like I said to you off camera, we never drank, we never did drugs. We went to church every Sunday, and so did our son. And then when this blew up in my face, all of a sudden, I'm like, what's going on? Yeah. I was just like,
It's hard. It's hard. It's somebody teaching you a new language, like, you know what I'm saying, like almost to like, what do you mean they do that? What do you mean they do this?
Yeah,
like,
bro. It felt like getting into a fist fight, but we didn't even get a chance to exchange words and push. It was just like I just got sucker punched, basically. Like I didn't see any of this coming because I thought, we're good parents and we loved God and
you were great parents. It wasn't. There's nothing. Addiction doesn't factor in. I mean, there are. Okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No. Go ahead, Rico.
No, I was gonna say there's for those people who've been beaten by their fathers, raped and blood. You know what I'm saying? Like I understand, but like I know you didn't come from that. Like you didn't come from that family. Neither did I. I came from an overloving family, maybe.
Yeah.
Right? Like.
Right. Well, so, and I can tell you what happens, and maybe I don't know if your parents thought this, but maybe they did. I can tell you I did. Even when my son was alive, I, for damn sure now, to my grave, I'll always be, there are moments where I'm like, well, maybe if I did this, or maybe if I did this, or maybe if I told him I loved him more, or maybe if I gave him more hugs, which I did tell him I love him. I did give him hugs, but I'm like, maybe if I gave him more hugs, or maybe if I spent more time with him, or maybe if I say something or do, like, I'll be playing this in my mind till I die. And I know that, to your point, I didn't do anything wrong. I am a good person. I am a good father. And I always say I am a good father, not was. I'm a father forever. But yes. I always, it's natural, I guess, I say, what could I have done? Like, to maybe if I said this or did that, like, and again, his mother and I were great parents, but I think it's normal to second guess, and maybe because it's your kid, and I'm sure your parents probably thought of that, like, oh, did I do something that? And your parents didn't do anything wrong. Your parents are great parents. And I always tell people, you could do everything right. We forget our sons, our daughters, they're individuals who have their own brains. We can't control everything. I can set my child up 99% for success, but that 1% is their choices. I can't. They fought, and this is what happened. My son unfortunately fell into that 1% because we did everything right. I mean, no one's perfect, but damn, bro, we were pretty close to my ex.
Listen, I get it. My brother, I mean, he passed away. Yeah, I'm sorry.
No, I'm saying we're not perfect, but we were two damn good parents, man. And it breaks, it's scary because you could do everything right. And this is the thing that I struggle with, because I'm just like, man, we did everything, not perfect, but right. Anyways, you were saying, Rico.
No. I mean, like, even my brother, like, he toured before he passed away, but he passed away. He didn't pass away from drugs, but he was doing oxys because he was in so much pain. And, people were like, oh, we got to get him off of it. And, and I was like, I knew he was in a lot of pain. So he was using it for what it was for, but it was, because of the stigma with it. And at the end of the day, like, I knew, like, I could set him up for everything, but it's really, like, they almost say it's the most detrimental for, like, not the most detrimental. That's bullshit. But like, it's, you almost want to stay a safe place for them to fall instead of being the yelling, screaming type of person to where they finally, like, oh, I messed up, but then there's also the psychotic breaks that happen that are like, there's not coming back. I go to meetings with people who I could tell, that they've had that, that luckily enough, and there's definitely been some type of brain damage to me. I'm not sure exactly, but without a doubt, I'm sure. Yeah. So it's like, you can do everything you can as a parent, as a friend, and whatever. But at the end of the day, it's the decision that person needs to make. And sometimes people have go too far, in a sense. I don't think people can go too far, but I think when it comes to, like, with your son, like a mental break like that, like, there's, like, institutions, and it's hard to say. Like, I don't know that experience of that, what you went through, but. Right.
Yeah,
it's not like they say, like, like in that movie, Good Will Hunting, like, it's not your fault, like, what I'm saying, and it's hard to accept.
Right. Yeah, because this is my team, this is my son, my family, and
they say it to me sometimes. I remember my therapist saying to me, going, "Your addiction's not your fault." I'm like, it's kind of like, like,
no, I mean,
I did pick it up and put it in my body, like, well, no, it's not your fault. I'm like, I don't know how much I buy that, but
I understand. No, I get it. And that's why I say, I mean, it is a type of disease. I mean, it's not cancer, like a brain tumor you're born with, but it doesn't mean it's not a type of disease. I think addiction is a type
of disease. But it's a treatable one most of the time. It's a treatable one, which makes it,
Right. Yeah. So let me ask you, when you, when people get sober, like, so when you got sober, what did you do? Like you stayed in a special building or something, or what? You were on Naloxone, or what were you on? What does sober mean? Like, how do you get sober? Like, you
So
have
well, I was like, yeah, so I was in the jail. So the first thing you got to do is not pick up, right? Like you got to like, so like it was the detox. So like I didn't pick up the drugs. And again, for me, it was, and some people say this, like a lot of addicts will say this, like who are very in tune to what they're doing. Like, you know, like they do heroin and coke and they know like, hey, the only place I could detox is in jail. Some people even call it an oil change. They'll go to jail so they can go back to using less drugs than they needed when they were there because they couldn't, you know, their immune got so high. So that, like, you know, I was put away for a few days. Then I went to rehab for a little bit. And then when I left, I remember saying, I was like, oh my God, what do I do when I get out of here? And they were like, go to AA meetings, like pretty much like the friends that you had, you've trained them to teach you what to do in the sense of like, I trained them and they trained me like, hey, we show love with drugs. They weren't bad people, but like, hey, what are we doing? Oh, let's go get some blow and go to the bar. Like that was our, you know, we weren't talking about fantasy football or whatever, you know, those things. And I did, like I said, I was like, kind of like, I'll just do what they say. Like, you know, just shut them up. And then I get back to what, you know, one of my first years is like, I'm just going to do this to shut everybody up and then go back to what I'm doing. Like, it was literally my first year of like, you know, like, I don't see this working and I can't imagine it working, but slowly but surely showing up and not using. And it took months for the brain to clear a little bit to enough to be like, oh, wait a minute. Like,
so does having a job or like a, you know, like, does that help to have like, you know, be busy?
So there's two schools of thought. There's like a group out here called the Pacific Group who are pretty much like, don't do drugs, go to meetings, get a job, like right away. Then there's another thought of like, hey, don't, like, you know, like if you can't afford, because not everybody can afford a rehab, they're pretty much like, go to meetings every day. Like if you go to a meeting every day, there'll be food, you know, there's food, they always have snacks or something. And people are always like, I've taken so many newcomers out to like go out and get something to eat because, you know, I mean, like and another one is like focus on your recovery, right? Like, you know, you have to make new friends, go to meetings, share, like get all into it. And then slowly, you know, but when you need a job, and you got to do it. And it's like, go to work. I mean, yes, keep busy with meetings or work or something.
Yeah, because I ask about a job, not for the money aspect, but to keep you busy, because the idle mind's a devil's playground. So if you're working and busy, you don't have time to be as tempted to go and because
you also go through a depression stage of it, like, you know, like it's the grieving stage of losing something that you've depended on so long.
Right, that feather in your ear.
You know what I'm saying? So sometimes people just like, you know, in rehabs and detoxes, they just pretty much let people sit there for, you know, weeks on end of just doing nothing. You know, just sitting there watching TV, kind of like letting the brain recalculate before they give them certain meds and, you know, because you're fogged. Your years of using, you know, it's clouded.
Right. So when you're on these drugs, does it affect like normal bodily functions? Like, does it make you constipated? Does it create erectile dysfunction? Does it make you sweat a lot? Or no, it's just like if you're on the drugs, you're quote unquote physiologically okay, or does it cause side effects with like, I don't know?
No, there's always side effects to everything. Like, you know, you drink too much, you're gonna have diarrhea. Like if you do a lot of opiates, give you constipated. You know, coke keeps you up all, you know, you don't get enough sleep, so then you start to get a little delirious, and you know what I'm saying? Like that's just drug-induced psychosis is a very common thing. That's probably you know, so like I mean, there's all side effects that most addicts just learn to live with. They kind of understand like this is part of the game. And that's why they keep doing it, because the more you do it, the less, you know, you're in the flow. You're not getting the side effects because, you know, you're getting, you know, you're not whatever, like, you know.
Okay. So this is a obvious question, but I'm going to ask it. So is a sober life, are you happier today being sober?
Yeah, definitely. It's a different life. It's a different life. And you know what, like good things happen. Like I've put myself in the game of good things to happen. Because when you're getting high, very rarely, like your percentage of something good happening in your life without your permission is less than 1%, right? At least I've increased those odds. Whatever they are, they're better than what they were.
Right.
And, you know, like they always say, wait for the miracle to happen. Usually the miracle is that you wake up one day and forget. And I don't mean forget you're an addict, but like you're like, oh, I got to go do this. I got to do that. I got to do this. And then you go to sleep at night and you realize like, oh, wow, I didn't think of drugs yesterday.
Right.
It's still in your mind. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like it's still the path is there. It's just there's more weeds in the path now.
Right. So how does somebody stay sober for 16 years? Like, do you have to do a certain thing every day or no? Or kind of like, what do you do?
In the beginning, I really was like, heavy meeting. I would go to a lot of meetings. All my friends, I replaced. They always say, don't do geographical, like wherever you go, there you are. But kind of like I went to rehab and then came to California and just kind of like separated myself from the people I was getting high with.
Yeah.
And, just made new friends. Like I went to meetings, just keep showing up, keep like we were talking about last time about making friends and just showing up. And then you just start meeting people and, you learn a new language. Like you start hearing people sharing, you start learning different things. And, people in playgrounds, they say, you know what I'm saying?
Right. Okay. So, I mean,
and it's an everyday thing, but just real quick, because I veered off a little bit, but like as time went on, life takes over. You have a kid, you have this, you have a bigger job. So like you don't go to as many meetings, but a lot of my friends, a majority of my friends, 80% are in the program. So when we talk kind of recovery,
right?
Like whether like in the sense of like, oh, this is happening at work today, blah blah blah. Like normal people don't express certain feelings like that. And it's like I know it's like whatever, but it's just kind of like I pray. I try. I don't meditate very much, but I try. If I do something wrong, I try to like make amends for it, like kind of like right away. Like try to be like
right.
I try to do the best I can every day. I know I'm not going to be the best.
No one's perfect.
But, yeah, nobody's perfect. But the thing I do perfect every day is I don't get high. I don't pick up that next drug. So that I do perfect.
Right. So sobriety also means that you can't have beer, right?
Yeah, no beer. I don't do no mood or mind altering drugs. I mean, I smoke cigars. I haven't smoked a cigarette because I used to smoke cigarettes, so I don't smoke cigarettes. But it's.
I mentioned beer because again, people don't think beer and wine are drugs, and they are. It's actually classified as a poison by the CDC. That they say there's no amount of alcohol that is good for you. None, zero.
None. Yeah.
So because
again, whole wine and stuff. Yeah, I know. When I saw that,
don't see it as no, it's beer, it's fine. But I mean, no, I've been to funerals where the person in the coffin died from beer. I mean, so it happens, and it happens all the time. And not only does it kill you, but it ruins your fucking health. Okay, so let me ask you though, as we close. So what would you tell somebody, a teenager or a younger person who is, looking into or thinking like, it's not a big deal, I'll try it, I can't wait to try it? What would you tell a 12-year-old or a 13-year-old?
Well, like, if they want to try it?
Yeah, they're looking to try it. They don't see it a big deal. They can't wait to start partying. What would you tell them?
Well, I kind of look at it as like if a friend of mine was going to get involved with a girl that is definitely going to destroy him.
Yeah.
People make their own decisions before they all ask, and there's not much you could talk about. But like, I just remind them like, hey man, just, there's like consequences. Like if you get caught with drugs, you're going to go to, you get to jail. But now you don't really say that with marijuana or whatnot. Like, hey, you're going to get like, you could get hooked. Like, I'm not one of those ones like, don't do it. I'm like, there's big consequences that can happen doing it. Like,
man.
You can't stop somebody when somebody wants to do something. It's, I mean, trust me, how many times I've gone in the casino and I'm like, I am only going to spend $100, and I'm at the ATM machine, like, and I promised Melissa 100 times, I swear to God, I'm never, like.
Rico, it's funny.
Everybody deserves their own experience in life, and you know what? And if they like, be a safe place for people to fall. So if they do mess up, they're like, oh, he didn't tell me not to do it, so I can't prove him right. He told me to be careful, and I got to tell him, oh, I wasn't careful. Help me, like.
Right. Yeah, no, you're right. I mean, and everybody is an individual, and maybe some people respond better to that. Maybe some people respond better to tough love. It all depends on the person and situation. And
every situation's unique.
Yeah, bro.
It's your fingerprints. There's no path to sobriety is the same. I mean, we have the same, let's say, book in a sense, like the Alcoholics Anonymous book, but like the same, we use the same tools.
Right.
But the way we get those tools, who knows?
Yeah.
So I say I got lucky. I'm stupidly lucky.
Well, listen, you also earned it too, right? I mean, you had
exactly.
You had to work for it. It didn't come to you. You had to go through trials and tribulations, and big shout out to your family because it's a team effort. I think anybody that gets sober, it's not no woman is an island. You need family, you need friends, you need professionals, you need your community, and of course the immediate family. So your success is your family's also their success.
Without a doubt.
You in whatever way that is, and So yeah. Now in closing, because we're ending on a happy note here. So what would you tell someone, Rico, who's in the midst of their darkest moments now? They're addicted. They're it ain't looking good. What would you tell that person?
I would probably tell them like, hey, like reach out, like go online, look up for like an NA meeting, Narcotics Anonymous or Alcoholics Anonymous meeting. Just go in, just go by yourself, sit in the back, listen. You might hear something. You might hear something that you relate to. You know what I'm saying? Like, don't look at the differences. Just go and sit in the room and let, you know what? If it happens, it happens. If not, you at least know where to go. But like, you have to take that first step out the door or
Right.
even turn on the computer to see it. Send yourself the link, text it to yourself. Like it's one of those things that you have to kind of let the miracle happen.
Yeah.
And like,
you
have to take that first step. You got to take the first step in the sense of like, all right, I messed up enough. Like, let me, and again, you don't got to tell nobody. Just go to a meeting and sit down, and somebody will probably say hello to you, and you just nod them off and go sit in the back, and go back again if you kind of relate a little bit, and sooner or later you'll feel comfortable. I know guys who've gone to meetings for 2 years, never said hello to nobody. And one day the guy was like, "Hey Rico," because he's heard my name in the meetings, because hey Rico alcoholic or hey Rico addict, and I was like, oh shit, like, hey, what's up? And he, when we would go around the room, he wouldn't even say his name. Wow. So it would be like, welcome. And, we just, like everybody, we all know it's like, but I would say do that. If not, look for a detox or a rehab but a step needs to be taken by you personally.
Right.
Or you call somebody and say, hey, listen, like, yeah, I'm messed up. Like, help me.
Yeah.
Maybe they know somebody to call to help you.
Yeah. And you're right. And that's excellent advice. And, I would say also to somebody, it's okay if you fail. It just
yourself some of my closest friends. Yeah,
yourself 100 times. Keep trying. I've been to Alcoholics Anonymous meetings with a friend of mine who, I would also say like family and friends. If you know someone that's hurting, and if they're open to going to a meeting, go with them. I went with my friend, and I'm not. Like I said, I don't even drink, and I went to the AA meeting, and it was great, and it helped him get going, and now he's sober, and so every little bit helps. And if he fails, I'll help him again. Like I don't, you're just going with the person,
Well, there's actually meetings for that. They're called open meetings. There's a lot of most meetings are open meetings till like, when they come around, it's like, hey, Rico addict, and you can be like, hey, Anthony, just here to support, and everybody's like, welcome, like, you don't got to be like, and I know friends who've gone to support people and ended up being like, oh, I actually got a problem. Like,
right. Yeah. And I told my friend, listen, I'm going to either beat the shit out of you or we're going to go to this meeting. So
there's people who succeed, who have successful lives, who don't realize like, oh, I am an alcoholic. I get drunk every day when I come home from work. They call it functioning alcoholics.
Yeah. Rico, I would make the argument the bar is even a lot lower than that. I know people, and we all know people, who end the day of work with a little drink or two every single day. I'm like, bro, I'm not an expert, but it sounds to me like you got a problem. You know what I mean?
A ton of TV shows are like that. I see them, they come up and like, oh, it's a stressful day, and they're drinking wine. And I'm like, wow, that
every day, 7 days a week. I would say, my girl, you got a problem. Anyways, but so alcohol's tricky, but no, Rico, I really appreciate you again as we close again, taking the time to talk about this. It's so necessary. Addicts are good people. They need help. And listen, none of us are perfect. So how dare any of us throw shade on an addict? Because unless you are perfect, then don't cast a stone, because only God's perfect. So have some friggin' empathy. Don't be an asshole. And like, I used to be that guy. I would throw shade at drug addicts thinking, fucking piece of shit. Fuck you. God, now, unfortunately, I got taught a very, devastating lesson. And I was open-minded before that, but then with the passing of my son, again, like, none of us are perfect. And
like this, like what we talked about today was just my experience, and there's other experiences that other people you may relate to. Like if you're like, oh, I didn't do opiates or this, that, like there's people who just did alcohol. I have friends who just smoked weed and they went to Marijuana's Anonymous. And and what I've said is just suggestions. Like, you don't got to do it. Like, you don't got to you don't have to do anything I said, or
we're just two friends talking.
Everybody's got their own journey, and I hope the best for everybody.
100%, right. Everyone has their own journey, and the best is yet to come. It will get better for you if you're addicted.
Yep.
You hear Rico's story. And more often than not, people do get clean actually, and they do have a great life awaits you with love and health and
beyond your wildest dreams. And you know what, like me waking up at 6 a.m. is one of those weird ones beyond my wildest dreams of, like I'm taking my kid to school. I'm like, oh my God, there's no way I want to do that.
Look at that.
But, your life, it's a reward. There's but there's millions of things that are great also.
Yes. And that's also why I wanted to have you on, because look at you now. You have a beautiful family. You're doing great, and you're going to continue to do great. And that is the awesome ending, the happy ending to this. And it's
a day at a time,
Well, of course, you can never.
The story's still being written.
Of course, you can never fully have your guard down. That's the key, right, to sobriety. But you're doing great, and you have a lot of joy and happiness in your life. That's the other reason I wanted to have you on, because you are succeeding, and you will continue to succeed. But anyways, any other words, Rico, before we end the program?
Nope, no, I can't. I think we pretty much covered everything, and just don't give up. Don't give up, man. Stay around till the miracle happens.
Yes,
it will.
The best is yet to come.
The miracle will happen. You just got to stay in the game to let it happen.
Yep. And also, there's 988. If you dial 988, it's free anonymous help on your cell phone. Very easy. You can dial 988, and you can get the ball rolling. Actually, so
wow, I didn't even know that. That's awesome.
Yeah,
we have helplines at AA and whatnot. I worked the phone lines a few times.
Yeah. So there's so much help out there, and you deserve the best, everybody. And thank you, Rico, for coming on Wellness Week. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. And check back for more great content. Like and subscribe. I'm signing us off in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.